Hello, I'm back and I'm going to talk more about how to understand Old Norse mythology. And if you have seen any of my previous lectures, you know that I stress the fact that Old Norse myths were told in a way that was poetical and metaphorical in style, and that the myths should be read as allegories and metaphors and as parables. Now, today I'm going to be a bit comparative here. I'm going to go all the way to India to begin with, to see how the way Indian myths are supposed to be read may provide some insight into how Old Norse myths are supposed to be read. And the connection is not so far-fetched, actually. It has something to do with the term Indo-European, and there is an age-old connection between Old Norse myths and Old Indian myths. So I'm going to begin with the Indian epic legend that is known as the Mahabharata. Now, that means the great story or something like that, and it is a great story. There are 6 main characters in the Mahabharata, and they are Draupadi, a princess, and her 5 husbands. Now that's interesting. Historically, if you're a sociologist or anthropologist, it's intriguing with polyandry, because it's not so common in the world today, but it does exist in some Indian cultures, and it has existed historically, and that is probably why the metaphor works, because it relates to something people in those days knew. But it is a metaphor, and that's the big point here, that it should be read as a metaphor. Any learned Indian person, Brahmin, yogi, just educated person who knows about the Sanskrit texts, they know that Draupadi, the princess, is not really a woman. She's a metaphor, and she's a metaphor for the mind, the human mind. And her 5 husbands are metaphors for the 5 senses. And the whole story is about how all these 6 different aspects of the human experience relate to each other and to the world around and to God. That's what the story is about. And now it's perfectly possible to read the Mahabharata just as a story. It's a great story on its own, just like it's perfectly possible to read the Old Norse myths as they are, without, looking for metaphors or clues or hidden messages. But when you know that the intention was to tell a sort of hidden story about these aspects of the human consciousness, then the whole poem, the whole epic Mahabharata becomes a different story. It becomes philosophy, and it becomes a spiritual manifest. Um, so it is transformed, the whole experience of reading the story. And that's also my point with Old Norse myths. Now I'm going to take another example, and I'm still gonna go into Indian myths. I'm going to talk about Krishna. Now, to the Krishna devotees, he is sort of God. We tend to think about Indian religion, the Hindu religion, as polytheist, that is, that they believed in lots and lots of different goddesses and gods. But the fact is that lots of Indians are not actually polytheists, they are pantheist. And pantheism means that you perceive all the goddesses and gods as sort of real, but as aspects of a supreme being, the one unifying God. And Krishna devotees, they believe that Krishna is that one supreme being behind all the other goddesses and gods. And now there is this story about Krishna and how he plays the flute, and all these shepherd girls come flocking to listen to his music. Now this is God playing, and they listen to this music, and it's irresistible, and they all fall violently in love. I'm just gonna have a look at my notes. Now, how does Krishna, how does he relate, how does he behave when all these girls fall in love with him? There are hundreds of them. Well, he splits into several hundreds images of himself, and he manages to make love to all the shepherd girls at the same time, and everybody are happy. So now that sounds a bit odd, but actually every Krishna devotee, every learned person again knows that this is not really, you're not supposed to read this literally. This is not about how Krishna makes love to lots of girls. This is about how God is capable of giving his full attention and having a personal and deep relationship to every human being at the same time, because the Krishna, no, I'm sorry, because the shepherd girls, the gopis, they're not really shepherd girls. They are metaphors for the human individual soul. And so the whole story is about the union between the individual human soul and the divine, and how every individual can have this strong personal relationship to God. So I'm going to go a little bit closer to home, but further back in time. The Greek-Roman Empire, it flourished from about a time of Alexander, sometime 400 years before Christ, and until the Goths sacked Rome about 400 after Christ, about 800 years, where the whole Mediterranean region, and even more than that, was a big cultural melting pot. People believed in lots and lots and lots of different goddesses and gods. And again, there were in this society strong undercurrents that were pantheist, people who believed in the one supreme being behind all the goddesses and gods. That was very much more common than we tend to think. Now, at the core of pantheism were the mystery cults, and the mystery cults were certain sects, you could say, but actually they were religions, big religions, of people who believed that the supreme being was a sort of all soul, that all souls, individual human souls and the souls of goddesses and gods, all derived from the same source, and that there was the big point of life was actually to reunite with that source, with the all soul. And they also read age-old myths in a different way than most people would. Like, take the example of the myth of Isis and Osiris. That's an old Egyptian myth, but it was imported into the Greek-Roman Empire, very, very popular. Now in the main myth, Osiris, the god, he dies and is scattered into tiny little pieces. Now his sister and wife, the goddess Isis, she collects all the little pieces of the god and restores him to life. And now every initiate into the mystery cult of Isis, they knew that this was a parable. This was supposed to be read as a parable, and Osiris represents the individual human soul, regardless of gender, and Isis represents the all soul, God, and who, through her mercy and great love for mankind, actually saves the souls. It is, again, a parable. And this is my point. I actually don't have time to go into how to read Old Norse myths today, but I'm going to say that the way Indian myths are supposed to be read, and the way initiates into the mystery cults of the Greek-Roman Empire actually did read their myths, is the clue to how to read and understand Old Norse myths. It is the same thing. So, okay, goodbye for today.